Tuesday, a U.S. District Court judge in D.C. said the Department of Homeland Security must fully respond to a request by the conservative group called the Heritage Foundation, and that's for records related to Prince Harry being granted a visa, despite his open admittance to federally restricted drugs, including marijuana, cocaine, and psilocybin. I'm joined now by Washington Examiner reporter Kaelan Deese. He covers the Supreme Court for us. Kaelan, thanks for being here. First question for you. What is the Heritage Foundation's case against DHS in pursuit of a FOIA over Prince Harry's visa documents really about here?
Well, thank you so much for having me on this. So yesterday, what happened in court is the Heritage Foundation attorneys made their case as this is part of a larger effort to uncover non-compliance with law by DHS in other areas, such as accusations from GOP lawmakers that DHS is, quote, deliberately refusing to enforce the country's immigration laws and is responsible for the current crisis at the border. So while some people might think, off the bat, like, is this going to result in, Harry perhaps, losing his status here in the United States? I think that's a little bit too much of a stretch for some people to be, making that assertion. I think that's sort of not the whole point of this. The whole point is to see, sort of is DHS, applying their rules and their regulations across the board, even for celebrities and people such as the royal family.
And then what did the judge order DHS to do by June 13th?
Yeah, so that was something that was made at the very last, I would say, 10 minutes of the roughly hour hearing. The judge, Carl Nichols, a Trump appointee, he gave DHS until June 13th, that's a week from yesterday, to determine whether or not it will expedite or respond to a request for the records. Now, there are three components essentially that the DHS has already responded to in Heritage's overall request. They have given the response for those three components, but there's a fourth one that DHS has not given any response to. And essentially what the judge is saying here is either make this last component all parallel with the last three, or give, tell DHS to expedite it, essentially. So this will be a procedural step, essentially, that will allow the judge to then move on to the merits to understand what and whether Heritage is entitled to these records that they're seeking.
So from here, though, then what arguments does DHS put forth to justify stalling this release of any of the records Heritage has requested?
So there are a couple, but one in particular, they point back to Heritage's initial request to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, which had initially denied the request because the group did not have Prince Harry's authorization or consent release information. John Bardo, the attorney for DHS, essentially said yesterday that a person's visa is confidential. And that's one of the, many arguments that they're pointing to here. They're also pointing to, past precedent. They're arguing that perhaps some of these outlets that have raised questions about Harry's status may not be, I guess, the most valid outlets in their eyes. Meanwhile, Heritage is saying, any media interest at all, is enough to sort of, bring up this question. And so that's something also that Samuel Dewey, the person that was representing the Heritage Foundation yesterday, was saying that Harry has already divulged his drug use in his book, Spare, that came out in January. And that is something that, is essentially no secret now. And it raises questions about, well, if he talks about this, but he was admitted into the country, what did the documents say? Some attorneys say that, well, you're not supposed to, lie on those forms. Did he lie, or did he, state the truth? And the DHS just kind of look the other way. That's kind of where all the questions are sort of stemming from, are those admissions that he made in the book.
What other legal battle is Prince Harry facing across the pond, despite what we've been talking about this entire conversation?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it's kind of unusual, I think, that even though this issue that happened yesterday in DC District Court didn't involve Harry or his attorneys, it still involved the Duke as a subject matter. And so separately in London's High Court, Prince Harry is testifying in a case, against a publisher tabloid, The Mirror. He's alleging the media organization of using illegal methods in the reporting. Namely, he alleges that his phone and his answering machine was hacked, at some point in time in the years that this outlet has been gathering scoops about the royal family. That is ongoing right now in the UK, and that is happening over a 7-week period. So it is unrelated, but also just interesting to note that this is, not the only legal issue that is bringing the prince into the foray.